Hello, welcome to my new three-part video series, an introduction to working with graphics. There will be three videos. The first will look at just basic graphic skills. How do you create sort of a simple graphic? How do you align them and manage them so that they look really good on the canvas? And then how can you take those graphics and turn them into a learning activity for the students? Second video, we will look at bringing in photos. How do you work with photos, edit the photos? How do you incorporate those into the graphics that you're creating? And in the third video, we will explore some of the other tools and techniques that you can use to sort of enhance your graphics work if you choose to do so. For most of this, we will stick with pretty basic skills. We will work inside Google so that it's something that everyone can feel comfortable doing. You can follow along if you want, and I believe it's something that everyone can participate in without feeling like you're having to learn a massive amount about photo editing. So with that in mind, let's get started.
Let's get started by working with just some basic shapes. And we're going to do that in Google Slides. That seems to be where a lot of us are working with graphics these days, so it seemed like the perfect canvas for us to focus on. I'm going to start by selecting these text boxes and deleting those because we're not going to be working with text. I'm also going to change the shape of my slide. I don't really want this widescreen canvas. I want more of a square canvas for the work we're going to do today. So I'm going to pick a 6x6, and now we have a square canvas for our graphic work. I'm going to start by adding a shape. I'm going to come up to the toolbar, to the shape icon. And click on that and you'll see we have 4 categories of shapes that we can select from. I'm going to go with the basic shapes and go for the oval. And if I select that and begin to draw, that's exactly what I have as an oval. While I'm drawing, while I'm holding the mouse key down, if I press the Shift key, it will snap into a perfect circle. And as long as I hold the Shift key, I can adjust that to get the size that I want. If I release the Shift key while I'm moving, it will go back to an oval, so you want to hang on to that Shift key. And you don't want to let go of the mouse. Once you let go of the mouse, it sort of locks into place. So there we have what we want. Let's let go of everything, and we have a circle that we can work with. Now, what can we do with this particular graphic? Right now, it's sort of a boring light gray circle with a black or dark gray border around it. So let's change that. We're going to come up to these tools right here, our color, our borders, our border weight, and let's make it look a bit different. Let's fill that with sort of a golden yellow color, and let's put a dark gray border, but I want it to be a more distinct border. And there we have it, a yellow circle with a gray border. That's how you can manipulate the colors. You can continue to do that over and over and over. That doesn't ever really get locked into place. You can continue to change how that might look until you get just the look that you want. I also want to talk about how we would position that on our canvas. If you've worked doing Bitmoji classrooms or Google Slides or any other sort of formatting option with graphics, you're probably familiar with the fact that as you move things, red lines pop up all the time, just all over the place. Those red lines are markers that let you know where you are on the canvas. For example, this red line lets me know that the edge of my circle is touching the very center of my canvas from left to right. If I push further, this lets me know the center of my circle is exactly centered on my canvas, so if I let go, that is perfectly centered from left to right on the canvas. The same thing happens when I move up and down. There is the very center of my canvas, top to bottom. And if I carefully find the crosshatch, now I'm exactly centered on my canvas, and so that is the middle of my canvas. The movements that we've been doing there, you can also get to those movements by coming up to your toolbar and choosing Format Options. You can position it on the screen, but you really have to know how far things are from the top left or from the center, which right now is at 0, but once you start to move things around, I don't really know the X and Y axis that carefully. So I tend to use the red lines much more than I would come over and use this. What I might use though is sizing. If I decide to change the size here, I can do that, but I don't know exactly what size that is. I can look at it kind of compared to the ruler at the top, and that looks like if I go a little bit bigger, I'm at about 3.5 inches, or rather 1.5 inches, from 2 to 3.5. But if I look, I'm really only at 1.48, and my height is 1.43. So by dragging it around, I've lost my square. I can move it back to being a square. And now I want to lock that ratio so that as I change height, I don't change the width separately. They all change together. I want to keep that circle. And now I can go exactly 1.5. And I know that I've got a circle that's exactly 1.5 inches. And then I can place that on my grid where I want. I want to look at a couple of other shapes just so you can see how they sort of work in the same way. Let's pick the rectangle. And you can see I can draw the rectangle going horizontally or vertically. Again, if I click down on the Shift key, it will give me a perfect square. Now, it's hard to tell on the circle if I rotate that, but on the square, you'll notice all of these graphics have this little line that pokes up at the top with a little circle. This one has it, this one has it. If I click and grab that little handle, I can rotate. Now, when you rotate a circle, no one knows. It all looks the same. That's why I didn't bother with that one, but it makes a big difference with a square. You'll see that on all of the graphic items that you add, as well as an additional handle for some things. So let's draw a triangle. I can make the triangle any shape I want, unless I hold the Shift key down, and then I've got perfect 45-degree angles at each corner. And now you'll see we have the blue handles for resizing. I have the blue ball at the top to rotate it left or right, but I also have a new item, this little yellow handle. If I grab that, I can skew the triangle to one side or the other. So the yellow handle is a new option that lets you change the perspective on an item. So let's look at how that might work with this item. I can draw this sort of pie shape, and when I stop, you'll see that I have two yellow handles so that I can drag and change how much of that little pie has been cut away.
Now that you know how to create some simple graphics, how to format them so they look really nice on the canvas, the next step is how do we arrange them and organize them so that they look really nice and really professional. So let's take a look at some of the tools inside Google Slides that will help us do just that.
I'm starting off with a canvas that has just one circle on it, a nice 1-inch circle, and I want to explore the tools that allow me to make a pattern from that. So the very first thing I could do is draw another circle and try to make it the same and continue to do that, but we all know that's not the best strategy. So I can select it, I can copy it and paste it. I can do that under the Edit menu with Copy and Paste, or on a Mac, it's just Command-C for copy and Command-V for paste. That's Control-C and Control-V on the Chromebook. However, there is even a better option on the Mac, and that is Command-D. That just duplicates it. You only have to remember one thing, Command-D. So let's get a few of those here. Let's see if I can put 5 of those in a row across here. Okay, 5 lined up across there, except they're not lined up very well. And I could try to line them up by moving each one and getting them all in line with each other, but there is a much faster way. So I'm going to select them all, and I will point out, just so you notice, when you select a group, You don't have to very carefully make sure that it's all inside that blue square. That'll do it. And you know you've selected them all because not only is there a blue square that frames your selection, but each of the items inside has a blue circle around it. All you have to do is sort of touch the items that you want included. So I can just draw a little line like this and release it, and it selects them all. Can also do the same thing by holding down the Shift key as I select, and my selection will grow with each option. Any way you want to do it, select the group. Now we're going to use some of the tools under the Arrange menu. I want to get them lined up right across the page so that the center of each graphic item, of each circle, is lined up with the center of all the others. So I'm going to align them. And I'm going to align them right in the middle. That's what I want to choose. So now they are all lined up perfectly on my canvas. But they're not distributed equally on the canvas. I've got a big gap here, small gaps in other places. Let's select it again. Let's distribute them evenly. So under Arrangement, I'm going to distribute. I'm going to distribute them horizontally across the page. And now they are perfectly distributed. The last thing I want to do, because now that I've got a perfect row, I don't want to lose that again. I'm going to come back to Arrange and I'm going to group them. I'm going to group all 5 of those items so that now they are no longer individual items. I can't click on the individual circles. Any click on any circle now selects the entire group for me. I can take that group, I can move it left to right until I find that red marker that tells me I'm exactly in the middle of my canvas, and I'm all set. A perfect row across the top. And while it's selected, I can Command D again to duplicate those rows. I can drag them down. Let's see. Oh, I believe I can even get a 5th row in here. Let's do that. Still got to line those up though. So let's grab those groups. Going to align them again on the center because I want them centered in my page. Then I'm going to distribute them evenly vertically from top to bottom. There they are. Now if I group them all I have to do is just drag that whole group until I see my cross hatch red lines in the middle, and I know that I have created a pattern that is perfectly centered on my page. Building patterns is a way to learn how to do your arrangements and your duplications. That makes you more proficient in working with your graphics.
Now you know how to create graphics, you know how to format the graphics, and you've learned how to organize them really professionally on the screen so that they look nice and neat and in perfect alignment. And you know how to group them together so that it's easier to work with them, use some of the duplicating tools. But we often don't put graphics just floating on a page. You need a nice background, something that makes it more eye-catching, something that makes it look more professional. How do we create a nice background for the work that we're doing with our graphics?
When we think about creating a background on our canvas or our Google slide, there are really 3 different options that we have. One is just to put in a solid color. One is to put in a gradient. And then one is to either bring in some other pattern or something that gives us more texture and interest in the background. Let's begin with the basic, just a solid color. We can come right up to our background button here and choose that, and that's going to give us our options. We would just choose our color. However, you can do the same thing, just right-clicking in your slide and changing the background. They both take you to this same box. So let's choose a color. Let's choose, I like this color. Let's go there. And done. And now we have a nice color in the background. And let's say I was going to throw on an object. Let's say I've got a Bitmoji that I want to put in there. looks so much nicer with a color in the background rather than just a plain white background. Now things are really starting to stand out and pop for you. Could take it a step further. Could change that background again, make it a little bit of a gradient, give it a little more interest. So let's change that background. Let's go from solid to gradient. You can still work with that purplish color. Done. And now if I move the object out of the way, you can see it's actually a little bit lighter in the center. It gets darker as you go towards the edges. It's a very mild gradient. But again, just adding some texture and interest to what you're presenting or what you're printing out in some way, however you're using this. And the more visually appealing it is, well, the better it's going to be. The more people are going to pay attention to what you're doing. Now, the last option is we can bring some other things in to create some texture. I'm going to push this guy over to the side for a minute. So one option is that I actually could bring in a photo. I can choose my background and choose an image, and I could do a Google image search, or if I had something on my Google Drive, or if I had it on my computer, I could upload it. I could put a photo in the background. But I think by putting this graphic over the top with a photo in the background, it could be kind of visually busy, a little bit much. So I'm going to go for a pattern because I can sort of control that and soften it and just have a nice little background pattern. So rather than locking something into the background image, I'm just going to bring in a pattern that I have found online. And I did this by doing some searches for transparent starburst, transparent tile patterns, and I'll show you what I came up with. I'm going to upload from my computer, and I'm going to bring in a tile pattern. And it's just some nice lines. It looks kind of dark and heavy, and it's like, oh, how's that going to look good? But we're going to adjust that a little bit. Let's bring it all the way out to the edge. We're covering the whole slide. And now I'm going to take that pattern that I just dropped on there, go to my format options. I'm going to change the transparency and take it from 0 all the way up to about 98 or so. And now it just gives me a very faint background pattern. So now as I drop objects in, it's just a pattern in the background. But you can see when I bring that object in and start to click, the object was put there on my slides before the second image. So when I try to move this now, it's actually behind it. When I'm moving things now, I'm moving the tile pattern. I would have to move it out of the way to get to this guy. So they are really in layers. One is on top of the other. So I want to take this tile pattern, come back to my Arrange menu, and in order, I'm going to send it to the back. Now I can move this over the top and move it around because this is in front of it. And so now it just gives me a nice little pattern in the background, just some visual interest. Let's say that wasn't the one I wanted. Let's move that out of the way. Let's delete that pattern. We could bring in something that gave it a different look. Let's use this pattern. Let's stretch it all the way out to the edge in every direction. And now I'm going to take that particular item and I'm going to push the transparency way down, giving myself just a little bit of what I can see there. Again, I'm going to push it to the back. And now I can bring in my object. Oh, I like how that looks. Looks like a little bit of a sunburst coming out from behind the icon. So there, that's a nice look. I could live with that. And that gives you some visual interest. It gives you some depth to what you're working with. You've got some layers going on. And your background is not just a dull white, but you've got a nice pattern that is really eye-catching.
So what's next? Now it's time to take some of the things that we've been creating and turn them into some learning activities, or at least the beginning of a learning activity, something that you might use if you were creating a worksheet to print out. You might use for a smartboard activity. It may be something in Google Slides that becomes a part of something that you share in Google Classroom. So let's take a look at just a few ways we can take the graphics we've been working with and create some basic activities.
Starting once again with just some blank slides, let's just look at a few things we can do now that we have learn how to create and manipulate some basic graphic objects. So I'm going to start with a blank slide. I'm going to come up and choose the oval shape. And I'm just going to freehand an oval. I don't really need it to be a circle. I want it to fill up most of the top to bottom, be a little more than halfway across my screen. Yeah, that looks good. And then I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to do that because I want two ovals overlapping so that I can make myself a nice little Venn diagram style sorter. And I will fill this with a light yellow. I'm going to increase the size of the border just a bit. I'm going to fill this one with, let's go that color, make the border a little heavier. And now I need to create that center circle there, that center area, because we'll have a space for these items and these items that are different, but where are they the same? I'm going to take the circle that is overlapping, the one that is on top. And when I go to my fill color, I'm going to come all the way down to the custom option. I will leave my color the same, but I'm going to drag my transparency slider about halfway. And when I say OK, that gives me my center area so that I can divide my Venn diagram up appropriately. And that's quick and easy. Obviously, you would put a title on the page. You could make things look a little bit nicer if you wanted, but I just want to demonstrate how quick and easy it is to start creating things using some of the skills that you already have. With that in mind, I'm going to jump to another blank slide. This time I have got it configured up and down like a piece of notebook paper. And for this one, I would create a sequence activity. So I would put in my title up here, and I would make that bold, and I would make it really big, and center that in my space there. And there would be my title. But now I need to put some things in order, and probably going to need some instructions for that. So there would be a text box there, a little smaller text box. That's where I would type my instructions for the students. And then I need to put things in order, and I have a 4-step sequence. So I would take this little, not the rectangle, I like the one here with the rounded corners, makes it look a little bit nicer. And I will just drag one of those and then quickly duplicate it so that I have 4 options. And let's get them all spread out here a little bit so that they all kind of fit. Now, let's just take everything and make sure that I have it all centered nicely on the page with my Arrange menu. So I've got everything centered. Let's take the sequence options. I want to distribute those evenly up and down the page. And then I also want to make them look a little nicer than they do. So I will give each one a nice, very light colored fill, just so we have something to make it a little more eye-catching. And now we've got the 4 steps: the title, the space to type the instructions, and then the students could type in step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. You could print this out as a handout, and students could write in the spaces. If you had pictures on the sides, on either side here, they could take the pictures and drag them in and create the order. Maybe you're doing a recipe and what comes first. You've got the measuring, and then you've got the stirring. And so a lot of ways you could use this, but you are just creating the spaces for them. These items all do connect together. So I'm just going to take a simple line, run it right down the back of all of those there. I'm going to make that a little heavier. And just so that it looks like it's connecting those squares, I'm going to go to my Arrange, my Order, and I'm going to send that to the back. And now they're all connected. So it's quick and easy to make that kind of worksheet or handout as well. Going to another one. We know how to draw these little squares now, so I'm not going to keep doing that. But I just want you to see that you have other options for connecting them together. So here we're doing a cycle. things that go in a sort of a cycle. I think in the water cycle, but planting a seed, watering the seed sprouts, you got a flower, whatever kind of thing might go in a cycle. And you can connect those with these connectors. The curved connector gives you a nice curve, and you'll see as you hover over one of these squares, you see the purple dot. If you click, it will automatically connect to that. You can take the other end and connect it to the other one, and it creates a nice little arc for you. And you could do that connecting each one going around the circle. If you wanted a straighter line rather than a curved line, you can choose the elbow connector, and that will let you start with one spot and then you connect to the other spot. And that gives you more of a nice squared off look to your connectors. But that's how you can use the connectors in this pop-up menu to connect items together. Let's look at one final one. This one I've already got completely set up as an activity, and again, nothing more than just 4 of those rounded rectangles distributed on the slide. Throw in some background colors. Here I tried to pick colors that kind of represent the greens of spring and the bright sunny yellow of summer and fall and winter. Put in some labels, and then I brought in some pictures around the outside of the slide. Now the students can come up and they can just drag the items into the right space. Snowflakes are going to be a part of winter, and so they can drag in and fill in the spaces. When you create an activity like this, you can project it exactly as this is up on the smartboard, and the students would see not only the slide, but they would see the items all around the side. So they could come up to the smartboard and take that and slide it right into the space, put it where it belongs. Or, if you prefer, you could have things lined up along the sides, and students could take the marker that goes with the smartboard and draw a line from the pumpkin to the fall square. Any way you want to do that. The thing to keep in mind is, if you go into the presentation mode, like you were showing a slideshow, you won't see the items along the slide. These items won't be visible, only the slide itself. Likewise, if you decide that you want to download this as a JPEG or a PDF, you will only get the slide, not the items along the side. But as it is now, students could complete this activity on their Chromebook. Students could do this on the smartboard. Students could do it on the computer. So it's a nice way to set up some activities, and you are creating really nice, eye-catching slides, canvases for the students to do their work on. And you are making them more engaging by adding some color, making them look nice, organizing them nicely on the screen. The last thing I want to show you is that we've been doing all of this stuff inside Google Slides. And that's perfect because a lot of work that we do these days is in Google Slides. However, it doesn't have to all be in Google Slides. You do have another option. I'm going to switch to my Google Drive for a moment, right into my drive. And I'm going to go New, and instead of choosing Google Slides, I'm going to create a Google Drawing. And a Google Drawing is exactly that, a canvas for drawing or for working with graphics. So there's no slide controls, there's no way to create an extra slide, you don't have multiple pages, you've got one canvas for each time that you open up Google Drawing. You have all the same commands for working with graphics that you have inside Google Slides. So you've got your arrange menus, you've got all of your pull downs for inserting images and text boxes and shapes and lines, and you have your insert options here. All of those stay the same, and it works the same. It just means that you're just working without any of the extra features that Google Slides would have. But I could take that exact same object here. I could take all of this. I could copy that. That would work perfectly fine inside a Google Drawing. And I could have my pictures along the outside for the students to drag them in. Either way you want to do it, that's up to you. I just want you to know that you've got options when it comes to working with graphics inside of Google.
I actually love working with graphics. It's fun to be creative. It's fun to use the different tools that let me create and manipulate those graphics into something that I like as an end result. Hopefully, if you begin to feel more comfortable with working with graphics and using the tools, you'll also find that it's something that you enjoy, at least enough that you feel comfortable putting it into your activities, using it to create more interesting activities. You can use the colors and the shapes to guide students' responses. So it really can be an important part of creating learning tools. And I just want you to be comfortable and familiar with how to do that. And hopefully this was helpful in getting you that way. Now, next up in our next video, we will look at how to bring photos into your graphics. There are a number of different ways to find photos, to take photos and get them into the graphics. Then how do you edit them? What can you do with them once they're there? So we'll take a look at that in video number 2. I'll see you then.